Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Nitin Garg, and in this video I'll show you how you can use the React context for state management in your React application. So let's get started. Before we dive into the code, let's first see the quick definition of a React context. So what is React context? In a simple word, React context allows to share the data across our component more easily. You can think of React context as an equivalent of a global variable for our React component. Let's understand through this use case. We have an application in which we have an header component and the homepage component. Header component have a language dropdown. So anytime when the language dropdown is being changed, we need to pass that selected language to a homepage component without using a props. How we can do that? We can do it using the React Context API. Let's see in the code how we can implement that. How do I use the React context in my application? There are 4 simple steps to implement the React context. First, create the context method. Second, you have to create the provider. Third, you have to put any value you like on your context provider using the value prop. And fourth is to read the value within any component by using the useContext hook. Let's see this in action by implementing the React context in a sample application. To demonstrate this use case, I have set up a sample application in which I have 2 components. One is the homepage component in which I just added like a dummy content, and then I have a header component in which I have a language selector drop down. So anytime when the language is being selected, I am setting that language to this component only. So if I run this npm start, so if I change this language from this drop down, the state of this drop down is only being maintained to this header component. So what we need to do here, we need to implement the React Context API to share that state to our homepage component so that we can write a condition to render this dummy content based on the language is being selected by the language selector dropdown. So let's get started and write some code to implement the React Context API. First, I need to create a new folder and I will name this as context. In that, let's create a new JS file and named as language context.js. Now let's import the React. Import React from React, and then let's create a constant language context is equals to React dot create context, and then you just need to export this. Export default as language context. Now after this, let's create a provider. So language context provider.js. I have created a provider JS. Now I have created the language context provider.js. This language context provider is responsible for providing the access of the current language variable and a method set current language to all its children. Now let's wrap this provider to our app.js. Something wrong I did. Okay, I forget to export this. Export default language context provider. See. Now, if I go here, There you go. Now let's wrap this. So by wrapping this, both header component and the home component have the access of current language variable and the set current language method. So far we have created the context and a provider which gives the access of this variable current language and method set current language to all its children, which is header component and the home component. Now let's go to the header component and implement the use context so that we can modify the value of the current language based on the language selected from the drop down. So let's import language context. Constant, and then just need to copy these two, paste it here. We can use the react.useContext hook to access the language context. Now here you can see I have hard-coded English so that when the page will be rendered, the default value is selected as English. Now I will replace this hard-coded value and try to get it from the variable current language. To fix this typo, and then I need to pass this current language. Now you can see the default value selected is the English. If I modify and set the default value as Spanish, then the default value in this drop down will be Spanish. So now you can see I am modifying the context variable and the reflection will be on the child component. So far we have seen that we can able to access the variable to the child component. Now let's modify that variable value based on the value is being selected from the drop down, based on the language selected from the drop down. So we have the handle change which is being called upon the drop down selection change. So we have to simply call this method and then we just need to pass the value that is being selected. And instead of choosing the selected language, we are going to see what current language is being selected so that we can see if that variable is reflected the right value. Now you can see. So we need to get this value to our home controller so that we can render this content into the corresponding language that is being selected from this drop down. I think first I need to get the translation of these two. So first translate English to Hindi. and the third language is Spanish. So let's grab the content in Spanish. So if I go back to the app, you can see all three type of content is available. Now we need to show one content depending on the language is being selected. So for that, again, we need to import the language context, and then I can simply copy this here. Now let's write a condition so that we can only render the content based on the language that is being selected from the drop down. So if current language is equals to English, return English content. If current language is equals to Spanish, then return the Spanish content. When I'm saying return, it means to render the Spanish content. Else if current language is equals to Hindi, then I think we are all set. There is one error, language context is not defined. Okay, so there was some typo. You can see the default value is Hindi, so that's why the content that is being rendered is Hindi. When I select the English, now the content is being rendered in English. Now if I select the Spanish, the content is being rendered in the Spanish. So with the help of the React context, we can able to access the state without having the prop drilling. I hope this video will help you to understand the concept of a React context. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.